older studies. Okay, and the third one, humans or animals. Okay, a lot of research is performed on animals or different species. Depending on your topic, okay, you might need to exclude animal research or include only articles that related to specific species. Okay. Okay. Age group. Okay, age group. And some researches might include subjects of all ages. Okay. While other studies might be much more specific. Okay. So what will you do with articles that include a wide age range as a single category? Include or exclude? Okay. You need to decide with evidence to support your decision. Okay. All right. Next will be the context. So studies might incorporate data from diverse settings, such as pre-hospital, emergency room, or surgical ward, or schools, clinics, and nursing home. Okay. So if the setting is relevant to your intervention or outcomes, you need to determine if particular environment might need to be included or excluded. Okay. Okay. Next, data type and study type. For various reasons, you might want to consider only data from specific type of research. Okay. For example, randomized control trial or observational studies. Or you might need to include single case studies or gray literature. Okay. Do you all know gray literature? Gray literature. Okay. Such as conference proceeding or thesis or dissertation or case report. All right. Yeah. Or the report from the non-government organizations. Okay. All of these are the examples of gray literature. Okay. So you might need to exclude study with high attrition rates, or where there are the questions around ethics. Okay, ethics, for example. Okay. So some of the cases that the primary investigator or the authors might want to include only published paper. Okay, only published paper. That the evidence are more reliable. Okay. Okay. Then we move on. So there are many other criteria that might also need to be considered. Okay. You need to carefully consider what will be in and what will be out when you start to get your search results. So these criteria will need to be discussed and agreed between you and your co-reviewer or your co-author, okay, initially, and evaluated several times while you refine the search process. Okay, now we move on to the example. Remember last time we talked about the examples, the Carrie's example. Okay, so as discussed, Carrie's pickle question is, in people at risk of cardiometabolic disorders whose weight is classified as obese, how effectively does chocolate reduce cholesterol level? Okay, so from the question we know that P is people with obesity, right? Okay, then intervention would be chocolate and outcome will be cholesterol level, right? Okay, so now we can move on. So she might list some basic inclusion criteria. Okay, articles published in English language, okay, and peer-reviewed articles. All primary study types, including cohort study, reporting chocolate consumption, and cholesterol measures. Okay, this is her intervention, and this is her outcome. Okay, and focus on human adults. That means no animal study, right? Okay, must include the data cholesterol changes. Okay, because from the research question, reduce cholesterol level. So there must be a change between the cholesterol level. Okay, so must include the data cholesterol changes. And must include cocoa or chocolate, not just extracted compound. Okay. So very specific. And must include participants who are classified as overweight or obese. Right? Okay, so we'll go deep to see each of the inclusion criteria. That means why she lists this criteria as one of her inclusion criteria. Okay. First, article published in English language. Okay. Carrie does not speak any other languages, nor does she have access to a translator. Okay. So she considers using online translation software, but a test shows that it is not yet reliable enough to be effective for nuanced, specialist academic literature. Okay. Then peer-reviewed articles. Carrie has noted that there are a lot of editorials and people are keen to share their opinion about nutrition and health online. She wants to consider only reliable research. Carrie knows that peer review is not infallible, but it does provide some degree of quality control. Okay. All primary study types. As nutritional benefits and changes can take time to become apparent, Carrie decides to include longitudinal studies and large data set analysis as well as randomized control trials, which tend to look at more short-term changes. Okay. In studies that only report conclusions, she will follow up with the author to see if sufficient data were available. Okay. And focus on human adults. Carrie realizes that adults are more likely to experience cholesterol issues, and also that children's physiologies change more quickly as they grow. So she focuses on adult studies. So you must have the reason why you list this inclusion criteria while you are doing your own protocol. Okay, and must include cholesterol changes. There are a lot of aspects to obesity. Carrie is specifically interested in cholesterol, so she wants to find studies that include specific measurement of cholesterol, not just overall physiological changes or related measures. Okay, and must include cocoa or chocolate, not just exotic compounds. Carrie is interested in nutritional changes that are easily adopted, so she wants to focus on common food items. And there are a lot of different compounds in chocolate and cocoa, so she quickly realizes it is beyond her capacity to review all of them. She notes that some studies compare extracted enhanced chocolate with non-enhanced chocolate. as this can include pre- and post-intervention results for the non-enhanced chocolate group. She will review them carefully at the full text stage if appropriate. Okay, so the last one must include participants who are classified as overweight or obese. And the group of interest to Carrie is people whose weight is classified in a specific way. She wants to focus on articles where similar groups have been studied. Carrie is aware that weight can change physiology and reaction to some interventions. Okay, so once you have your inclusion criteria, you also have your exclusion criteria. Okay. So her exclusion criteria could include this. So as you can see, just like the opposite way of inclusion criteria. Okay. So articles with full text published in languages other than English, and articles which are not peer-reviewed, studies focusing on animal data, and articles discussing extracted compounds rather than whole cocoa products, and studies using only in vitro techniques or focusing on biochemical molecular processes in specific body systems, and studies that focus on multiple dietary modification in addition to cocoa consumption. Secondary or tertiary articles. That means she will exclude the systematic review paper or meta-analysis paper. Okay, only original paper. All right. Okay. Also, we'll quickly go through her exclusion criteria. Okay. So the first one, articles with full text published in language other than English. Okay. She doesn't have access to reliable translators, so she limits the study to research she can easily read herself. So she realizes that this could limit her views to studies focusing on specific aspects of the problem or considering particular cultural factors. Okay. And articles which are not peer-reviewed. Carrie knew she should consider great literature sources in a systematic review, as sometimes scientifically valid studies may remain unpublished, particularly if they have negative results. So Carrie thinks there is a chance that there may be peer-reviewed conference papers or other quality studies published by reputable organizations on this topic. A review of the great literature with a librarian failed to uncover any reliable evidence in the great literature. Instead, they found that there are a lot of opinion around nutrition topics, and in some publications, articles are actually well-disguised advertisements. So due to this, Carrie was confident that she could specify articles that are not peer-reviewed as one of her exclusion criteria. Okay. And studies focusing on animal data. She realizes that animal physiologies are different to human, and that chocolate is very toxic to many species. She also notes that many animal studies in this field are looking at very specific changes, while she is interested in larger changes within human physiology. She decides to exclude animal studies. Okay. An article discussing extracted compounds rather than whole cocoa products. Carrie is interested in interventions that are easily accessed by her clients. Her initial background reading also indicated that there are many different compounds to consider, and she doesn't have the resources to learn about and review data for all of them. Okay. Studies using only in vitro techniques or focusing on biochemical molecular processes in specific body systems. Carrie realizes that one nutrient can have a whole cascade of effects on physiology, okay, through various processes. Many of the articles looking at these changes are very specific and require detailed knowledge on this area. For her purposes, learning about holistic changes in her clients, it is more important to focus on a bigger picture. Okay, and studies that focus on multiple dietary modifications in addition to cocoa consumption. Carrie knows how difficult it is to separate individual factors and confounding variables, even in a well-designed study. So she decides to consider only studies where chocolate and cocoa is a primary intervention, okay, and can be considered separately from other changes. So she is not interested in studies where a change in chocolate consumption is part of a whole diet change. Secondary or tertiary articles. While Carrie realizes that these studies are high quality, they usually focus on very specific questions which are different from her research question. She also prefers to consider the original research, okay, rather than accepting someone else's conclusions. She does make a note of any reviews or meta-analysis she finds though, as they can be very useful for forward searching or comparison later. Okay, and the last part is quite important. Okay, and there are other issues need to be considered. Okay. In this example, will be type of chocolate and chemical, comorbidities, types of cholesterol, and definition of obesity. Okay. For types of chocolate and chemical, initially Carrie considered looking at the various compounds in chocolate and considering white, milk, and dark chocolate separately. Okay. She quickly realizes that there are many compounds in chocolate, and even different composition for chocolate with the same overall cocoa content. In order to manage her review effectively, she decided to consider only whole chocolate and cocoa, and to consider any whole cocoa product. Okay. Then comorbidity. Okay. Obesity is a complex condition which is often comorbid with other conditions. Carrie finds some articles look at samples with particular conditions, for example, diabetes. Okay. After careful consideration and discuss with her colleagues, she decides to include studies where comorbidities are present. Okay. As long as the main focus of the study is on cocoa and is linked to cholesterol or obesity, not the comorbid condition. Right. And then type of cholesterol. Okay. Cholesterol is her outcome. So she also needs to decide which type of cholesterol she is going to focus on. Okay. So cholesterol is often presented as a single substance, but Carrie quickly learns that there are many different types. The literature appears quite heterogeneous. Some studies clearly distinguish HDL, LDL, and total cholesterol levels, so while others focus on specific types of or ratios. Carrie decides to include all of them. So that means if you want to develop your own inclusion criteria and exclusion criteria, you need to do some work before. Okay. Okay. And the last one, definition of obesity. Okay. So because her subject will be people with obesity, right? So she needs to decide the definition of obesity. Okay. So initially, Carrie works with the WHO's definition of overweight and obesity as body mass index BMI over 25 for overweight. Okay. or over 30 for obesity. Okay. So as she begins to screen articles, Carrie comes across one that discusses normal weight obese participants. So she has to carefully consider whether it should be included. This indicates the importance of carefully considering all aspects of your topic when developing your initial protocol and search strategy. Okay, so now we move on to your exercise, right? So you need to think about your inclusion and exclusion criteria for the research question you did last week, right?